Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Boomerang Theater Company. My name is Tim Errickson. I am the artistic director of the Boomerang Theater Company. And today we have a special guest. We're chatting with playwright and screenwriter, Matthew Paul Olmos. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. I'm in California, where things are a little hectic, but overall, I've been doing fine. Actually.
Excellent. That's good to hear. I want to read Matthew's bio real quick. Matthew is a three-time Sundance Fellowship recipient. He has affiliations with the Center Theater Group, Ensemble Studio Theater, Humana Festival, New Dramatists, INTAR, and New York Theater Workshop. Also, the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. He is a Princess Grace awardee. He has received the La Mama Ellen Stewart Award, which was selected by Sam Shepard. And he's been mentored by Taylor Mack and Ruth Malazek. And he's a Kilroy nominator, which is especially awesome. So we're excited to have you here, my friend.
Well, good to be here.
How are you holding up through all of this tumultuous summer into fall now?
You know, overall, I've personally been okay, and things have been fine in my space. I mean, it's been difficult to deal with everything. It's definitely taken a toll on the writing. And I think what's interesting is that for me is that I think before this, you know, when I've normally been in New York, all you really want is time to write, just like space. You get up early, you go, you take some time off, whatever you have to do, you know. And all of a sudden, there's this heap of time in your lap. You just have all the time in the world. And it's the dream. But strangely, most playwrights I talked to, at least, you know, through the early first several months of this, nobody was writing because it was, unless you had like a deadline.
Yeah.
Because it was just weird. It's hard to concentrate with everything going on outside. And then, like we were mentioning before, like all of a sudden, like doing normal things felt more important somehow, like cooking, like cleaning the house, or like fixing things around the house.
Yeah.
Gardening. And for some reason, writing didn't feel as, I won't say not as important, but it just felt like a time where you needed to be a person for a little while and just like do things that don't normally get the chance to do with our busy schedule.
Yeah. It's funny. I think that is affected too, not only just by the pandemic, but also by some of the social things that were happening, being away from other people. Like there was so many things happening that it's interesting to see how people have sort of tried to hold on to something or find something that feels real and authentic, so that they can process all the other things flying around.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would think that I would have, you know, pulled out like 3 new plays all this time, but you know, no, I really didn't.
That's fine.
In retrospect, it'll seem to be like, oh man, I wasted that time. Like I had so many hours, you know, to do that with, but it did feel important to just sort of like, no, I need to like cook. I need to like fix this thing.
Yeah, self-care is just as valid as anything else. I mean, if not more so. So creatively, how about now? How are you? Have you started writing again? Are you working on projects now through all this?
You know, it's actually interesting. As like I teach also playwriting for a few places, and as classes sort of picked up again, and just seeing students bringing in work because they have to, it has definitely felt like, even though it's very different, it felt like the world has sort of shifted back into like, okay, we're back to doing things.
Yeah.
So somehow something that the structure of it also, where it feels like, oh, okay, I can now like I should start things, and it also feels like other endeavors on my own career things have started again. So like I do have pages due like a couple weeks, and so it definitely feels like almost by force though in some ways that like, okay, the fall is, and now it's time to write again.
Yeah.
Whereas it did like, I'm just the guy living here.
Yeah. So now that you're back to writing and sort of getting back that creative flow back, what's your process like? Do you like to write in the morning, or do you like to write at night, or do you have a specific place in the house that you like to write?
I mean, it's different because like before this all happened, I was mostly in New York, and so I would usually take a day and like go to New Dramatists or go to the Lark and sit in their places and just like churn out stuff like in a long sort of time. I would write. Or I would be up late at night writing. And now I don't have those resources here in California, so it's been a little bit different. And I generally in the afternoon will just sort of sit down and say to myself, I'm not going anywhere today. fast, and I'm gonna just like try and chat some pages. It's hard here also because like I can go to a cafe, but if it's really hot here and it's outdoors, like that's not that enjoyable. Go inside anywhere, there's no AC. I mean, there's nowhere to go that has AC because I can't go inside anywhere in California yet. So it's definitely, the process is definitely feels more piecemeal right now, where it's like I'm trying to carve out things to do. And I'm missing my resources in New York of just like, I can go to theaters and just pop down and just like, and also the environment though, like sometimes I'll go to the Signature Theater and in their lobby, find a little corner. Something about just being in some sort of theatrical environment is definitely something that's missed that I wish I had here.
Yeah, the Signature lobby is amazing. That might be the greatest thing for writers in the last decade.
I didn't go for a while because I thought it's too many. I'm gonna see people I know. It's gonna they have the intermission side, but like now I just go over by the corner where there's almost like a little. I think they intend it to be like a bar. And you can kind of plug in there and face your back to the entire crowd of everyone who's at intermission or whatever. And I've been able, to turn out a lot of work there actually. And it does feel nice also to like, you're in a big cool theater space.
Yeah. Do you run into people that you know there, like from time to time?
That's the only problem. I mean, but I try and limit it to like on my way out or on my way in, I'll say hi or something like that. But, I think if I faced people, I would be like,
yeah. There's a couple of times I've sat there for meetings and I was like, oh, look, there's Josh Charles walking through on way to rehearsal. I'm not getting anything done now. Like, things like that.
Right.
Whoever it might be.
Right.
So in terms of your process, are you a coffee drinker or a wine drinker, or do you need a bottle of water? Like what helps you?
Actually, I don't drink coffee ever. I have probably like 3 cups of coffee like a year. I'm like at a wedding or something. I think I've never picked it up, and I just like in New York, I ride a bike everywhere, and so like in the morning, that's my like adrenaline kick.
Yeah.
But no, like in New York, I'll generally like I can go to a bar actually and write. I can go and get like a beer and like sit and just wait for a good while. I tend to like if I'm not gonna be at home, I need to be somewhere like that's somewhat social that I can hear people, but it's usually like me at a window somewhere, like facing people. I can sort of look out and see people walking by. But if I'm too in the middle, like in the middle of a coffee shop, it's a little too. I get too distracted by the conversations.
Yeah.
Walking in, or that's so and so. I don't know. But other than that, it's like I'm usually a late night sort of like I'll stay up really late, trying to get ideas down. And then the funny thing always is that like if I stay up too late, in the morning I'll reread the pages. And they're pretty good for a while, and then like the last few pages like doesn't make much sense. It's like, what, an angel came in? That's
yeah, things get a little weird after 3 a.m. Like there's no account. Yeah. I tend to find that I if I'm writing late, I'll pick up and dream the pages I was just working on. And sometimes it's good dreams or bad dreams, and then like it colors what I think of the thing I was working on. Like, oh, I had a nightmare about oh crap, I don't want to read it again, things like that.
I just find that because that reminds me that like sometimes early in the morning, I'll be sort of half asleep in bed and like I just I finished a dream and I can kind of remember it. And I'll come up with some ideas that I think are brilliant, like at 6 a.m. And I'm laying there, I'm like thinking, I'll remember this. And usually by the time like 9 a.m. hits, something like that, the idea is not as brilliant as I thought it was. It's sort of like, I think I was sort of half asleep and it sounded like, oh yeah, listen, and they can do this and we could follow it this way. And then like, they're usually like really grand ideas that I don't think I can actually pull off. And they're not as sensible as I thought they were laying down. Every once in a while, I will get up early in the morning because I have something in the morning. And I'm like, oh, I got to get that down, that line or that lyric, whatever it is. And then I'll write it down, make sure I don't forget it, and go back. I think they're like you were saying, like there's something about the dream state.
Yeah.
There is a little bit of like some things get like the subconscious gets pulled out a little bit.
Yeah. What when you have a situation like that where you've come up with a line or whatever, do you write them down in a notebook? Do you write them down like in your phone, or how do you keep track of snippets of things like that come along to you?
Yeah, I'm really like I'm a huge comedy fan. I love stand-up. I love going to it. I love hearing about their process a lot, and so I attempt to do. They always carry a little notepad with them wherever they go, because if they have a line or an idea or a bit, they want to have it with them. So I try and do that. I try and have one nearby wherever I'm staying when I'm sleeping, so I can jot it down.
Yeah.
The only problem for me is that if I'm writing these ideas down at 6 a.m., either they don't make that much sense in the morning, or I can't even read it. I'm like, wait, what? A guy does, you know. But I tried in my bag. Usually when I'm around New York, I have a notepad in there in case I need to jot something down. I'm not huge on giving ideas on the phone. I'm too nervous. I'm afraid we're gonna get erased.
Yeah, I've got like 5 different like starts of things that make no sense now in my notes feature on my phone. You know, and you're like, what was this?
Yeah, even though I've never lost anything on notes, I'm nervous that it's gonna get erased.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Eric and Eric.
So when you are working and you either get stuck on something or maybe, I don't know, stuck is the thing that I keep coming back to, but I know it's not always that. It's not always that. Sometimes I feel like for me, it's sometimes intimidation of like, oh, can I, thing you were talking about earlier, can I execute this thing? Like, this is a big thing that I've come up with and I don't know that I'm ready. Is there a piece of advice or something that you think of that sort of you fall back on as a source of inspiration or something to ground you in those moments?
Yeah. I mean, I actually remember one. I don't know where I heard it, if it was on TV or not, but something that Roger Ebert, I think, said.
Oh yeah.
He said that he didn't believe in writer's block. He thought you just write through it. Like you're gonna stumble across things that you don't like, or you're going down the wrong path. But like he didn't really believe in like, I can't do it today. Like you writing, and you might not find gold, but you'll find something. You're like, okay, you know what? I didn't solve it, but I have like it's almost like you're climbing a wall a little bit. Like you didn't get to the top, but you found a good thing. You're like, okay, no, I can with that.
Yeah.
So I do think about that a lot. Where I'm like, no, you're not. You're like you haven't found something. Just continue to just, even if it's not good writing. Yeah. The other thing that I do a lot though is that my plays are very often research based. So there's a lot of research that goes in them. And usually what happens is I'll get really intrigued by some topic and I'll start researching about it. And I don't know where the play lives in that world, what it's going to be about. But I'll find some little detail in the research. And I'll be like, oh, that's interesting to me. And that's what I start to form the story through that. And then when I get stuck, though, what happens, oftentimes I'll go back to the research. I think because I find the research inspiring, and that's why I wrote to begin with. So something about going back to the research or going further in research and an avenue I hadn't gone before really gets me sort of like, oh, okay, that's what it is. I wasn't taking this part of the historical event. So I have, so for me, research, I go back to research a lot if I get stuck somewhere.
Yeah. How did you come up with that process? Were you always interested in writing things that started with research, or did that evolve over time?
No, like actually, when I was in college and even the beginning of grad school, I was writing plays that were like kind of relationship dramas or like sort of lyrical, sort of like, no set, sort of like poetic type things.
Yeah.
And then actually, I remember because I was in New York, I got to New York just for 9/11. And I went to see at the old, I think it was called the Sunshine Cinema, maybe something like that. The Landmark Sunshine Cinema on Houston.
Yes.
I went to see, what's the Michael Moore, Bowling for Columbine. And in that play, because it wasn't that long after 9/11, I think that movie came out. There's a scene where he shows the footage of the towers. And being in New York, like not that long after that event, and watching that on the screen, I remember like the entire theater was like this pin could drop. We were just like staring in silence as he was showing this footage of what happened and some commentary about the U.S.'s involvement. And I remember I left the theater and I was like, I can't write anything anymore that's about like men and women, or like sort of just more things that I didn't think were socially relevant. I remember I marched right to the old Shakespeare and Company that used to be right by NYU on whatever street that is. Yeah. And I bought the book Nickels and Dimes, which is about sort of getting by in the U.S. on the minimum wage. And I read it in entirety that night, and I was just inspired. I scrapped all the plays I'd been working on in grad school. I was in grad school at the time. And I started writing things that were more socially relevant. And it sort of started there, where I started like topics I wanted to write about. I didn't know that much about them all the time. So because of that choice, I started researching more, and it's become a thing where like I really like right now I'm starting research on something. It's one of my favorite parts of the process, and it actually feels weird for me now. If I just start writing a play from nowhere, it feels like naked or like odd, like I'm not prepared. So even if it's not a play that's necessarily a historical event or something literally researched, I need to read about the topic. I need to read about other accounts. I need to like have some time with stuff before I actually feel comfortable creating anything on it. So yeah.
So when I find this fascinating. So I'm just going to ask you another question about it while I have you. So when you're writing, do you decide on a project and to say, I'm going to research about it? Or do you just sort of start looking for things that interest you and a play sort of emerges from the things you happen to be reading? Does that make sense?
Yeah, like, I mean, I'll get sort of like, oftentimes it comes like from watching or reading the news, and I get sort of upset about something and something's really bothering me. And I start in my brain to think like, but isn't it kind of like this? Or I think something's not being reported about it. And so I'll just start diving into research just as a person, because I find it fascinating. And then I am aware though, like an impulse, like I do want to write about this. But yeah, me usually waiting for that moment where like something clicks in the research. I'm like, oh, that little story right there. That's dramatic, or that seems like something I want to stand upon. Or
yeah, so you
yeah, but sometimes
you're able to discern or the spark of a dramatic question sort of emerges from something that you're reading, and then do you spend a lot of time after that point before you start writing, or once you've got the spark, do you want to go and start putting things down on paper at that point?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the thing. Like I almost know by now, like I need to get a certain amount of research where I feel like I have, so I'm researching and story ideas are starting to form. And then when I have enough of that, I'm like, okay, now I can start to write it, but I sort of know a little bit. I don't know what's going to happen in the play, but I know a little bit. So I would say for me, there's definitely, I need a good little while though before I can write something. Sometimes I'm really excited to write about it. So I want to sit down earlier, but I know when I sit down, like I'm not going to use these pages.
That's fascinating, I think, because I think the impulse for writers to just want to get fingers on keyboards really quickly when you've got a inspiration, but recognizing that the process still needs to mature in some way before you're ready to say something interesting or complete or whatever that might be.
Yeah. No, I have a memory of I have a trilogy of plays called So Go the Ghosts of Mexico, which are about the U.S.-Mexico drug wars. And I just started researching it. And I remember I never used it, but there's an intro to the first play where like this woman is like buried by sand and she comes out of the sand. Like it was something I was writing before I did enough research. And it was maybe there's something there like about this woman in the sand, whatever, but it wasn't going anywhere. And like I remember the scene because I was almost embarrassed to read it. Like the actual play, I was like, oh my God, that was my opening scene at some point, which has nothing to do with the play now. But it was just a weird me trying to like, I wanted to write about something about the border situation.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the knowledge about it yet.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So do you have projects coming up that you want to talk about? Do you have commissions or thing? I know a lot of people are doing like, people are getting Zoom readings and Zoom things and, people are trying to stay creative and positive and sort of get work out. Do you have things coming up that you want to share?
Yeah, I'm actually, I got invited to be a part of the Geffen Playhouse out here in LA to do their writer's room. So it's basically like, I think 6 or maybe 6 playwrights who will get together like kind of almost a little more than once a month, I think, and we share new pages. But, when you apply with a project. And right when the pandemic started, I read a book called The Education of an Idealist by Samantha Power, who was our UN ambassador under Obama's administration. And I'm reading this book, and it's really fascinating. I wanted to read it for a while, but I had the time, so I was reading it. And there's a chapter that's like in the middle of the book is a chapter on Obama and his administration's handling of the Ebola outbreak in like 2014, I think. And it's amazing because if you read it now, it reads like, oh, wow, that's what a government is capable of doing in terms of galvanizing support around the world and executing a very targeted, like, we're going to take care of this problem before this epidemic becomes a pandemic. And just reading how they actually, like, the ins and outs of the, close to it, how they did it, I was like, oh my God, that's the most amazing story. Just like, it's literally just watching a government and a leader actually lead as opposed to what they're doing now. So that's the project I submitted to them. And so like, I think theatricalize it or sort of make it my own sort of style, but like, so it won't be a Kentucky drama, but like, I'm actually excited because I've begun the process now of like reading that chapter a few times, taking notes on it, and then starting out to do other research. And so I'm in that sort of exciting spot where I'm like, it feels weird sometimes because I'm reading about something that's not a great situation, but there's like a hopeful story through it. But the writer in me is also like looking for things that are like, that's good. Like I mean, so it's a weird thing. Like it almost feels like, what's that word? Like the birds who sort of pick at bones or whatever.
Oh yeah, like carrion or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels a little bit strange to me sometimes because I am looking for gold in some ways, but I'm reading about something that was not a great situation. Handled great, but so that's that weird thing of like, yeah, I'm waiting to be inspired by something dramatically.
Yeah.
Reading about important.
Yeah, and to your point, like the mirroring that we're going through now is probably got to be also, disconcerting, but also like inspiring, and I don't know. That's probably an unusual spot to be in as a creative person, looking at two sides of the same thing happening for you kind of simultaneously.
Yeah, I mean, like I finished it a while ago, but like there's a play I was working on before all this about it's a small story that happened within the Watergate story. But that one was like almost like I could not write it because it was researching that time period where there was so many things where it's like, oh my God, there are so many things that are parallels to that. But reading this one also was like, look at all these things that administration did so smartly and swiftly. And it's a weird chapter, I think, to read now. And I wonder what it would have been like if I read it before. Oh, that's interesting. But now it's just like, oh my God, in the middle of sort of unleadership, to read about leadership. Oh my God, that was.
Yeah. If people want to see more of your work or get to read more of your stuff, where's the best place for people to go and check out your stuff?
My website, which is MatthewPaulOlmos.com, and then also I'm on New Play Exchange. I think most playwrights are by now. On New Play Exchange, there's my name or whatever, all my plays will come up. Some of them are on there. Maybe. Yeah. But they're all accessible somewhere through there, I think.
That's fantastic, man. I'm really glad we got a chance to sit down and talk.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you. Good to see you.
Stay safe out in California, my friend, and we'll see you when you get back here to New York.
All right, you too.
All right, buddy.
All right.
Take care.
Talk to you later.